Welcome to AI for Good, the leading action-oriented, global and inclusive United Nations platform on AI. Organized by ITU, in partnership with 40 UN sister organizations, and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of AI for Good is to identify practical applications of AI to advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and scale those solutions for global impact. In today's session, we're counting on you to use the live video wall feature to ask questions and post comments to help create an engaging discussion. We encourage you to stay until the end to chat, connect, ask questions, and network with our distinguished panelists and world-class AI experts in the neural network. It is now time to kick off the session and welcome our first speaker. The floor is yours.
Many thanks, and indeed, I'm delighted to open the floor for these few hours where we will be speaking about a very certain and specific topic, and for the third year actually in a row that we joined the effort around AI for Good. Our subject of today will be all about how AI and data can help to protect and sustain global forest ecosystems. My name is Pierre-Adrien Hanania. I'm a Data and AI for Good, a global leader at Capgemini and the Chief of Staff to the global public sector at Capgemini, where we serve public services across geographies, from Canada to Singapore and Australia, and between, of course, as well, all the other continents. I'm very delighted today to have a lot of different experts from academia, from startups, from tech firms, from the public services to talk about this specific topic. And if we go to the next slide, indeed, just to start with something that is really dear to us about the past years, where in season 1 and season 2 of Data and AI for Good by Capgemini and the ITU, we have tackled already a lot of topics about the power and what information environment, if used appropriately and with a purpose, can achieve. 2 years ago, when we started the partnership, we looked at the adoption of AI across SDGs. We looked at AI for education on early dropout, or we looked at AI for health, AI for environment, along use cases and very various stakeholders. I remember we had 2 hospitals speaking about how they forecast bed availability. In the second year, we took a more focused stance of a certain technology, which was all about data sharing in public sector. Here we had the honor to have the OECD, to have the International Labour Organization, to remain and be able to discuss along specific fields how data sharing can help. This year, in the third year, we wanted to take again another level of focus and really take a look at one topic that is occupying us all: protecting our forests. As you see here on the chart, it is not a new topic, but the topic today is of crucial nature. It is not just about protecting our forests, to be honest, but also about giving them and getting them back at the place where the human will respect the place and the role they have in our ecosystem. It is therefore not only to react to the danger that is above our forests today, but also to proactively reimagine the role, the importance, and the ecosystem approach that we need in order to respect those. Obviously, we have seen during this summer, but again, this is nothing new, a wildfire. Once again, I come from a country, France, where this was particularly a problem. I know that speaking to my English colleagues, for the first time, we have seen also fires in London. So this is something that is not at our door since yesterday, but where time is running and where we have to apply the intelligence we can have, the information we rely on, because the information is there. We cannot say that we don't know. We have to apply that information in a way that will help to tackle concretely the Sustainable Development Goals. And here again, not to be mistaken, it is not only a question of environment. It's not only a question of green sustainability. So therefore here, just for you to see basically 4 SDGs as Sustainable Development Goals that we have to achieve until 2030. We see that it is something that plays right into our targets for SDG 3 on good health and well-being. It is something that also plays into innovation and infrastructure, climate action, life on land. But to have our forests and to rely on our forests truly is not a question of the green corner of our earth, but really actually something that we need to embrace as full part of our societies, regions, cities, urban cities, and so on and so forth. Now, looking at the power of information environments, as data and AI offer lead for public services, I tackle a very broad range of use cases that are not only focused on forests or on environment. But what we see again and again is these 4 play fields. Intelligent automation of administration, process mining, robotic process automation, and how we can enable the workforce to play with the mathematical advantage of AI and intelligently streamline processes. That could be, for example, to read in seconds satellite imagery that would before take years to screen or identify. Interaction with the citizen public servant, you had a good example with Anna before, is how we can improve the interaction between administration, citizen, and processes. Use and leveraging chatbot and conversational AI for FAQs, trivial questions, while the human still relies on the most complex cases. Identifying anomalies. Here it's about understanding what happens and what will happen, basically. And the advanced analytics and more specifically, the predictive analytics part of AI. It's about understanding, okay, there will be or there is a problem here. We have forests endangered by bark beetles, or we have illegal occupation, or we have wildfire occurring right now. Of course, that means also to know, based on the information we can rely on, what will happen next. And hence, also, what should we do in order to tackle what will happen next, based on the information that explains what happens already. That is helping in the decision-making process, which is basically the emergence of a data-driven government, of a data-driven organization that relies on information and transforms it into knowledge. Because information is lying out there, but if we don't use that, if we don't leverage it, it doesn't become knowledge and it doesn't become action. Now, having said that, one very important point. Technology, data and AI will be able to help, will be able to unlock with its mathematical advantage time and room in space in some areas and use cases if we define the right use cases. But at the end of the day, it's the human that commits. It's the human that is accountable. It's the human that needs to understand why we use AI and data and for what we use data and AI, for what purpose. That's why data and AI remain a tool. And that's why data and AI comes with an ethical flair. Now, looking at the map here, and as a kind of last word in this regard, because before I open the floor to the experts, basically, as said, the problem is not new, and the reaction to this problem is also not new. We have initiatives across geographies, not enough yet, but we have a lot of policies, a lot of efforts already engaged in several areas. And I will maybe just leave it with 3 areas that are inspiring some of those examples here. First of all, we use data and AI to better understand our forests, to better observe the planet, to better observe the earth. Second, we use data and AI to better protect the forests, to see the wildfires coming, to see the anomalies today and tomorrow. And last but not least, and that's a topic I would like to push definitely during these 2 hours, is about not just talking about deforestation, not just talking about the challenges in the forest itself, but also about talking about reforestation. How can we have a proactive stance? How can we have a generative stance in regards to how in the way society has evolved over the last centuries, we can give and allow a forest, obviously, to have the role and place they need, both in our regions and in our urbanized areas. With that, I give the floor to Melissa Hatton on the other side of the transatlantic side of the earth to introduce us the agenda and who will we hear about today. Melissa, you have the floor.
Good morning. Well, it's good morning for me anyways. I'm in the US right now. So depending on where you're joining us from, I wish you all good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Melissa Hatton, and I'm a data analytics project manager and AI strategy lead for the US public sector line of Capgemini. And I'm delighted to be moderating a panel discussion on how data and AI can be leveraged to protect our forests. I'm going to be jumping into a panel discussion soon, as you can see here. But before we do so, I'd like to turn things over to Ing Yang. I'm going to butcher the last name, I apologize, but to give it our keynote speak for today. Speech.
Thank you very much. Yeah, can you hear me well?
Good.
I'll start sharing the screen. There we go. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. So thanks very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here as well. I think it's a great initiative and a great topic to talk about, especially now, as we all know, COP is starting in a few days. So my name is Inge Jonkier. I apologize for the difficulty in the surname. So I work in the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. I'm in the forestry division. And so this is exactly what we're going to talk about. So global forest ecosystems. So thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward also to the interesting panel discussion. So I will talk a bit in the framework of the UNFCCC and IPCC. I guess the whole audience of this webinar is very acquainted with. So in my hobby, in my free time, I would say I'm an IPCC author. I was an author for the Error 6 for the working group 3, the mitigation. So this is why before going into detail on AI and forests, I want to take a step back and just check and see that the IPCC report, who was just published a few months ago, really says again, we're not on track to limit the warming to 1.5 degrees. I think everybody on this call knows it, but it's good to know. But the one thing is to know, but also we should act, and we have to act now. As you keep on seeing in the press, also the window is now. So this is why I was very pleased also in the introduction of Pierre-Adrien. I think it's good to raise awareness also beyond this community, because as said also by Pierre-Adrien, it's really up to the human. It's us who really have to act. So this graph, just to show, as most of you might know, we're not on track. The emissions are going up, have never been so high. Although there was a few years of COVID, it has completely recovered. So we really have to act and try to reduce emissions. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. So I said I work in the UN. We work in the framework of the climate change. So the climate crisis is here, it's now. So monitoring and forecasting forest, land cover, land use, also as seen in the introduction, is more crucial than ever. Just to give you an idea, 11% of these emissions are due to the deforestation and the forest degradation. And as said, also, we really need to focus also on reforestation, how to react. So one thing is to know about the data and what's going on, but one thing is also to act. So in the FAO, we work on different levels. So we have the global scale, for which there's a variety of data and data sources. So we work with satellite data, and there's a lot of global products. And then on a national scale, there's global data, which are often used nationally, or there can be national data for different international reporting frameworks. Good to know, maybe FAO is not a research center, but we do work very closely in collaboration with space agencies, academia, where we really rely on the science, and a lot of other implementation partners to develop tools to assist countries in their measurement, reporting, and verification. So we call it the MRV of the land and the forest ecosystems. So as also said in the introduction, so it all starts with data. Indeed, we need to know and monitor before we can really act, but it's very crucial to also go to the last part. And why do we need all these data? So as seen before, so the climate is not on track, but we really need to predict, mitigate, and respond to these forest disturbances. in order to really have a more effective and sustainable forest management. So one thing is, as I said before, the emissions have never been so high, so the mitigation is a crucial thing. And apart from that, also more and more, especially after the Glasgow COP last year, we're looking into adaptation. So really to go and see what we can do to adapt locally to these global climate effects. So the AI has brought up before. So what is it? So I'm working almost 25 years now in remote sensing, work with satellite data. We've had a lot of terminology, and now indeed the last 10 years we talk more and more about AI. So it's really a system to interpret external data correctly, to learn from the data and to use this learning to achieve specific goals. So we've seen in the introduction some application on the forest fire. I'll take it to the levels of the emissions just to show what we can do with AI and why is it so important. Also said already, so data and information. So one thing is to have a huge amount of data out. I think we live in the decades, and also let's say in the whole framework, a lot of data has never been more data than we have now. So the AI is to really extract the useful relationships. So the machine learning has become great the last decades. In our case, the combination of the satellite, the LiDAR data, so the active satellite data, together with in situ information is still crucial and is the key of everything we do. We heard also on the predictive AI. So one thing is a forest fire, but there's also a lot of other extreme events, hazards, pests, fire outbreaks. So we need to know the past in order to predict the future. And for this, machine learning and AI can really help in that. So one example, as I was saying, so we're looking to the mitigation, so trying to reduce the emissions. So I've been working over 15 years in the REDD+. It's the UN REDD program. It's the, let's say, the response to the UNFCCC REDD+, so reduction of emissions of deforestation and degradation. For this, countries have to submit a reference level. So without going into detail, you can see that from 2014 it has been started, and you can see now that we really came a long way with a lot of countries reporting their results, so showing that they're really trying to do something at the reduction. And we're talking about 11.5 billion tons CO2 equivalent. So that's really a lot of efforts by all these countries. So in that sense, FAO really tries to support these countries to get the reporting out. The methods for this, as I said before, we need satellite data and we link it then to field data. So the combination of satellite data and in situ data. So here you can see to the different reporting frameworks where have been reported to. So you have the UNFCCC, we have the Green Climate Fund, result-based payments, and then from the World Bank also the Forest Carbon Partnership. So without going into all the details, but to show that all these methods have been done using the satellite data and linking up to the emission factors, because the activity data with the emission factors give you the greenhouse gas, which then eventually gives us the whole state, let's say, of the emissions worldwide. So you can see that there are 56 countries have submitted to the UNFCCC, so the United Framework Climate Framework. So the most countries have a national forest inventory, or there's inventory data suitable. But of course, there's a lot of challenges with it. Although really needed also validation and calibration, by linking these two, we really try to bring together the greenhouse gas inventory for these countries. So why would they do it? So one thing is indeed to protect. It's a big word to say, to protect, to restore. They really have to do something for the climate. But of course, these countries can only do this when there's really an incentive. And the incentive in this framework has always been the carbon finance. So the carbon finance is a very complicated matter, which is not the topic of this webinar, so I won't go into detail, but just to show that these are the incentives for which countries keep on reporting to the international frameworks. So there's result-based payments, as said before, with the Green Climate Fund, there's compliant markets, and then the voluntary carbon markets is coming along as well. So all of these comes with different standards, and which makes that the same data has to be, let's say, sold or put in a different format depending on the different standards. So looking to these monitoring and policy needs then, so is it really that better data gives better decisions? So as I said, I worked 10 years in the UN REDD, so we've seen that coming a long way also for the mapping of the activity data. It has to be combined with emission factors. So does better data gives to better decisions? So this is a crucial part. I said before, there has never been more data out there, but do we take the right decision for this? So in that sense, we can say that there's a really need for better integration of these in situ data with the space data. And then also, as said before, so mitigation efforts have been huge, also because finance was mainly in that remit for the forestry sector, but also now adaptation, so new monitor field to be explored. So we should try and also harmonize agriculture together with the deforestation. So the two sectors really need to go hand in hand. So what does FAO do with this? And I also put on this slide, Silva Carbon. So we're part of the Global Forest Observation Initiative together with Silva Carbon, and we try to help countries with tools to get this forward and to support them. So we have an initiative, it's called Open Forests. So it's free and open source tools. So important for everything we do, it has to be free and open source in order for countries to really have ownership and really to take advantage of it, even in times where they're not allowed to buy licenses. So we go into detail. This is a full initiative which all tools and methods for data collection, analysis, and reporting, also on a geospatial basis, which allows them to come up with consistent numbers for the different reporting frameworks over the years. So the principle is that it's free and open source. I said we're not a research institute, so we really work hand in hand with all private and public partners, academia. And the good thing is that this has been in-country tested, so more than 130 countries use this, and linked with capacity building for the implementation of 44 countries to have it in their national forest monitoring systems. Because as I said before, monitoring is crucial because only through monitoring there can be also action on the ground. So one of our biggest parts in this open forest suite is the CPAL. It's a cloud-based platform for accessing, processing, and analyzing geospatial data. It's free and open, so you only need an internet connection. Remember, we work mostly in developing countries. And so the idea is that all these countries can freely access data, also high resolution satellite data as the planets, which is provided by our donor NICFI from Norway, and which they were allowed to do cloud computing. So there's a lot of capabilities. There's also an online and a mobile version, so very easily to be used, also for people who are no experts in the geospatial world. So the link to the Collect Earth and Collect Earth Online, which is a tool also for training and validation data, so which can be used then also with the satellite data. Going into this, there's also the part on the augmented visual interpretation. There's free access, as I said before, to very high resolution imagery, thanks to the donor from Norway, and the multi-temporal imagery to Google Earth, Bing Maps, and high resolution. The algorithms and the modules which are CPAL are provided by a lot of academia. We work closely, for example, with Boston University, with Wageningen. And so as long as it's open and free, it can be put on the cloud CPAL platform and can then be interlinked and used by the end user. So the Collect Earth Online is developed in collaboration with NASA Severe and the FAO. So it's an online application. And the good thing is that multiple users can simultaneously collect information, which can be crucial in national forest inventories. So I said before, planet data. So we're very pleased to have it, pan-tropical high resolution data. So we have the mosaics on the CPAL, which are open and free of use, which is a great use for us, also helping countries to put their greenhouse gas inventories together. We talked first on the FAR Explorer. So for example, here the validation and verification, that's also something which can be easily done on the CPAL platform. With the different data sources which are available for the different zones in which any end user can be interested. There's site-specific high-resolution interpretation possible. So this is, I think it is from Tanzania. And then we also have not only, as said, forest deforestation, but also forest disturbance in general. So using graphical user interface, which make it easy also for non-expert users to make maps of disturbances using algorithms. So in the whole part of also the restoration, so as some of you might know, so it's the UN Decade for Restoration. FAO is a big player in this, and we put up a platform for monitoring this terrestrial ecosystem restoration, in which users can go through the different layers and prepare own indices based on all the data which is available and which is gathered in the platform, also through the modules in CPAL. So as you can see, there's a lot of different frameworks, very similar indicators and same data, because at the end of the day, it all burns down to one thing of the same data. So we map all these frameworks related to ecosystem restoration and also the database which contains the data, the indicators. So here you can see quite some reporting frameworks to which countries all have to report. So if we look at all this, so what's the take-home message? And so the link then with AI. So a follow in the IPCC report have shown that they provide large-scale emission reductions. So forestry is really important. Agroforestry, reforestation, avoiding deforestation is more crucial than ever. Due to these positive impacts of certain international and climate policies, it really shows that it can have an impact. Although from the IPCC report, we also see that it's a bit too early to really see that these zero deforestation pledges from the public and private are really effective. Very important then, I think, in this framework of this webinar, as well as international cooperation. So transnational partnerships are crucial to really have a role for the technology and experience sharing. Remote sensing, so Earth observation with long data records over remote bases, for example, can really help in the validation, the monitoring and the process understanding. So also AI and the machine learning is really important there. So for the policy side, which I think we can conclude that I'm at, we really have some wish lists, of course. We're very happy, but there's always more to do. So supporting this mapping, this change in land cover and land use, and also linked to the adaptation monitoring as said. So we're come a long way with the mitigation monitoring, but I think now it's more than time also to look into the adaptation monitoring. Something quite unfold is still the soil properties. Really to link also below, because carbon has been looked at mostly above soil, but it would be also good to see in the soil. Support agriculture and forest management. I said it should go hand in hand to avoid silos between the sectors. And then also in this crowd, there's a distinction, of course, between private and public end users. So my talk is most towards governments, as UN is bound to work with the governments, but also the private sector, and the private part has a really big role in this to play. So how we should go forward, at least from my perspective, I think very crucial also in the whole world of AI research and remote sensing is that the user requirements are really taken into account. User inclusion really from the concrete project start, also with implementation agencies, with the actors, with the companies, it's really, really important. One thing we've seen is that data ownership is the big thing, also for the spatially aggregated products. And sometimes the ownership can really done also with an endorsement at the last phase, for example, and really to include the different countries. So we talked about all these different policy frameworks. So crucial, as I said before, the data should be linked to the implementation of the measures, because otherwise we leave it at the step that we only see what's going on, but we also have to act. So also the implementation of these measures is crucial. So we heard already about the UN SDGs. So there's quite a few which can be tackled, in which AI plays a big role. So here I've listed 2, 12, and 15, but as seen also in the first presentation, we have many more to tackle. So let's say the evidence is clear, so time for action is now. And with COP27 just ahead, I think the time is great to have this webinar. So thank you very much for the attention. And then here you have my details and contact details. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Ing, for joining us today to share the interesting work that you and the FAO are leading to protect our forests. Before we move on to the Q&A session where the audience can ask Ing questions, we're going to move over to our panel discussion. So joining us from Europe, I'd like to welcome our forestry experts, Kate Kramer from Overstory and Stefan Mermoz of Globio. So before we jump into our discussion, though, I'm going to turn it over to them for introductions. Kate, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. I am Kate Kramer. I'm with Overstory. What we do at Overstory, we're a Dutch company. We work all over the world. We use satellite imagery and AI together to do vegetation intelligence, largely for electric utilities, basically to keep them informed about where trees could potentially fall in on lines, grow in on lines, and potentially cause power outages and wildfires, which we'll get into a little bit later.
And then Stefan.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me today. I'm Stefan Mermoz. I'm the CEO of the Globio Design Office that I created in 2018. I was first working for the French Spatial Center and the Center for the Study of the Biosphere from space, the CESBio in Toulouse in France. And then I created Globeo in 2018. I'm conducting research activities related to vegetation monitoring, and more specifically, forest loss mapping in near real time, biomass mapping, and crop mapping.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And we already met Ing. And I want to apologize if there's any background noise. I'm going to try to keep myself on mute most of the time, but construction just got up and running in the building that I'm in. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get the discussion going so I can turn it over to our panelists. And as mentioned by Pierre-Adrien earlier, our themes for this event are focused on how data and AI can be used to observe, defend, and enhance our forests. So to start off, I would like to ask the panel about how data and AI is currently being used to observe or monitor. What initiatives are currently in place?
Maybe I can start if you want. Or... Yeah,
everyone's welcome to jump right in.
Okay, I think Inge showed already some of the actions, for example, from FAO. So there are some global actions and some more national actions, and I think one of the first game changer related to the use of machine learning for forest monitoring was from the Global Forest Watch platform that opened, I think, in 2013, and which is an online platform that provides data and tools for monitoring forests, and which is open to everyone. And there are also national actions. For example, in Brazil, we had the first forest monitoring alert system, PRODES and DITER, that were developed, that were pioneering this topic in the year 2000. And thanks of this system, the forest loss decreased by approximately 75% in Brazil from 2004 to 2015. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I find particularly interesting about AI, and specifically with regards to satellite imagery, is that when I talk to people who are interested in getting involved in climate and making a difference with the climate crisis, a lot of the conversations that I've had a few years ago, and frankly, that I myself was involved in, were people saying, well, you know, I'm not a climate scientist, so I don't have the information to be able to help. And what I find really fascinating about AI and satellites is that they give us the scale to be able to apply skill sets that people weren't applying to climate before. So now when we see things like the IPCC reports that are sharing, here are the problems, here's where we can fundamentally make a difference, people start to be able to connect the dots in their thinking with what can we do to apply our skill sets to this change to make a difference. And frankly, the reason that story hits so close to home for me is because that's how Overstory came to be. It was a group of people who we didn't have much climate expertise, but we understood that, for example, we found out that wildfires that were started by electric utilities became 17 times more catastrophic than wildfires started in other places. And as we see wildfire crises continue to expand with droughts, with lack of biodiversity, with rising temperatures, we realize that that's a very actionable place where we can make a difference. So not only are we looking at where climate is changing and where we can take people who don't necessarily have a background in climate and apply their skill set, but we're also able to have a look at what we can do at scale as a result of working with satellites and AI. And that's what gets me really excited about it.
Yes, maybe to chip in also what Stefan was saying. So yeah, I talked about a few initiatives of FAO, so I said global and national. So the main thing also globally is, I forgot to mention, the global forest resource assessment, so the FRA, which is every 5 years, which also has a huge remote sensing survey, so in which the state of the forest is coming. I think one of the crucial things, at least also for this webinar, is to think how we bring these two together. So we have the global data, which of course serves a lot of needs also, let's say, for the policymakers. As said, the IPCC, it's a global report. But as we all know, action needs to be done on a national, local scale, because globally, okay, we do have the UNFCCC framework, but then it's up to the different nations to really come up with policies and measures and to really also follow up with the implementation of it. So I think linking these two is crucial. This is also why I said, so these global products are very useful in case there's no national data. But then they're also mentioning, for example, Global Forest Watch, crucial is that these products are then endorsed or at least used with the end users, which in that sense can be national governments or local end users. So I think bridging this gap of these two is really crucial.
Okay. What are the overall benefits as well as the limitations of these initiatives we're talking about to monitor the forests?
Yeah, according to what we were just saying, I think the biggest benefits are, as you say, Kate, for example, that we can raise public awareness first. So there is a constantly increasing societal pressure now to reduce deforestation. It's encouraged by all this data, by NGOs, and now, as you say, Kate, everyone is aware of that. And I agree with you also, Inge, that AI needs to be linked with effective policies and better law enforcement. I mean, it's no need if we don't have any action from governments at the national scale. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's an interesting intersection of finding the balance in profitability for businesses. I think in order to scale this, one of the things that we found is that policy is the thing that holds us all accountable in a way that maybe an individual couldn't push the needle. And I think the interim space is profitability, right? Where we have this intersection of individuals care enough about climate that they want to make a difference here. And then there's policy that's holding people accountable along the way. And I think there's this space in the middle where we have this huge opportunity to demonstrate to businesses that being environmentally conscious and making strides in this arena is profitable. It makes sense for humanity. It's not just a thing that we have to do. It's a thing that we should be doing because that's how we take care of each other better.
Mm-hmm. Staying on the topic of, monitoring our forests, are there any major data gaps that need to be filled? Any limitations there with the data that we're collecting?
Well, maybe if you want me to go first on this. So as said, so in FAO, we have a long history of national forest inventory. So we help countries to fill this in. As many of these developing countries don't have a history of national forest inventory, so the only way we can go back in time is using, luckily, the satellite data, which go back to 1972 with the Landsat archives, who became then open in 2011. So that was a great game changer. And this is also thanks then to this, or at least it has evolved, and also all the ESA Sentinels free data, which is crucial. So I think from what I see, and Stefan, I think you can connect on this, is that there's a lot of need for in situ data. So satellite data is always needed, and we can process. We have these machine learning, so we can come up with products and a lot of very detailed stuff. But we also need to validate all these products, and in that sense, sometimes some of these countries are just simply dangerous or hard to get to. So in that sense, I think there's still a gap of these in situ data. And one of the things, as Pierre-Adrien also said, the data sharing was also an issue. So in academia, data is some power in the sense that you have to do your publication, and it's very crucial. Then if you go to governments, it can be also data as information. So it's also sometimes not so easily shared. So in that sense, I think there were also gaps in data sharing, which we also try to look into, but it's not so easy from that part. But I think so in situ data in tropical forests might still be a gap for a lot of products. So yes, Stefan, I think, yeah.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I fully agree with you. It's really an important point because this is one also of the limitations of AI. We need many data for training the methods. And what Inge was just saying is especially true for forest loss and forest biomass. It's very hard to get some in situ data. Fortunately, there are more and more international initiatives, like let's say regarding biomass, say for example FOSS, the forest observation systems, or geotrees, the action from the CEOs to try to gather all this biomass data to build a network with data available for all and with harmonized data that everyone can use. And regarding priceless data, it's even worse because it's kind of frightening being there in the middle of the forest anyway. And so that's to me a limitation, and especially regarding AI. Yes.
It's also worth noting too that it changes so quickly, right? We're talking about biodiversity loss, and so much of that in situ data, it takes time to collect. There are so many hurdles in it that you mentioned, that collecting that data in the first place. By the time we collect it and we process it, I think often the situation has changed so much that we have to make some pretty big assumptions about what it is now.
No, that's true. That's also something maybe which I forgot to mention. So I talked about all these reporting frameworks, all these things ongoing. A lot of this stuff has not been resolved. Also AI, it's still there. Some of the parts are still in the R&D component. Unfortunately, parallel, as I said before, these countries are reporting as we speak now. So some of the issues are not solved, but they have to present and propose something. So in that sense, as Kate said, some of the data, by the time it's analyzed, maybe some of these species have already been abundant. So yeah, it's two parallel streams, but I think that shouldn't stop us for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You all raise really great points. Anything else on monitoring that we may have overlooked?
Yeah, I think just another limitation of AI is the huge amount of resources that is computing resources that is needed. Fortunately, there are initiatives such as CIPOL, like Inge was talking about, but just saying that so far most of the global initiative for like global mapping with AI was done by Microsoft or Google, and I find it hard to go further, and because of this huge amount of resources needed. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, I guess we'll move on to our next theme, which is defending. So, that now that we've identified some of those threats, how do we defend forests? What data and AI solutions exist to help defend the forest against those threats?
One of the things that I spoke to earlier was this, the catastrophic wildfires and how quickly they're spreading. It's something that we're thinking a lot about with our team. And one of the things that we notice and why this is so pressing is that, of course, with drought, with infestation, with rising temperatures, all of these pressures on forests are compounding. So it's not enough for us to just watch it happen and to report on it happening. This is where I think it's really important that we align profitability with policy, because when we get people on board with this idea of what can we do to make our city infrastructure, our city planning, our social planning align with where our policy is heading, we can be a lot smarter. So a perfect example is looking at, okay, here's where trees are likely to fall in on a power line, and beyond that, not just a tree likely to fall in, but a patch of trees. We're looking at NVDI data from space and looking at what's healthy, what's unhealthy, what species are most likely to ignite, and what species are most likely to be susceptible to bark beetle infestations. And from there, how can we share with the utilities that our city infrastructure is dependent on, where we're likely to see power outages, that from there, it's not just a power outage, right? Like, we lose power, we lose the ability to access the water to fight the fire. That becomes an issue with minoritized communities and with disabled communities that are so dependent on power to survive. Like, all of these issues are so tied together that we can't just be thinking about using the data that we have to prevent the loss in the first place. We have to tie it into all of our other infrastructure and all of our other planning to get other people on board and invested in that mission.
Yeah, maybe to add on this. So indeed, I think this is crucial. So in a way, it's the early warning. If it's for forest fire or pest outbreaks, I think that's crucial. And I think I really keep on hammering on the fact that it's linked to the right institutions and the law enforcement. So, for example, I see very often great initiatives, be it private or by an academia, which is not embedded in the law enforcement of, for example, a local or regional or even a national initiative. And I think that's really something missing, really the part to defend the forest. Like I've seen, because we're talking about Brazil, so we hope also that the Brazilian system, which was the great system for the national forest monitoring system, who really helped to set up a lot of other countries, they had a great link with the law enforcement. So the early warning system was linked then to the law enforcement by the forest rangers to really go out immediately in the field and look how we're working, because only then you can really do something. You can have a very nice system bringing you alerts, but if there's no action on the ground after, then it's really hard to get anything done concretely.
Yes, indeed, it was really successful, and it gave an example to other countries at this time. Other countries started after that to develop some alert system, and also something probably important is to build partnership with local communities. There are some with law enforcement and local communities, and there are some example of initiative like working with local people, receiving like alerts on their smartphone when you detected like illegal deforestation from an observation system. And also another tool, I think, which is useful is the prediction of deforestation. I mean, to help forecast deforestation before it actually happens, to predict where deforestation will occur, because we have some hints. We know that, for example, let's stay in the Amazon. We know in the Amazon that most of the deforestation occur close to past deforestation areas, between 0 to 5 kilometers for most of them, or we know that illegal mining as well occur usually close to other illegal mining areas. So thanks to that, we can do analysis using AI as well, or machine learning, and try to find some correlation, and then to build some models to predict the deforestation, which is I guess a useful tool for defending a forest before deforestation happens.
Now, in an ideal world, I envision like data and AI being used to, directly combat a lot of the threats that we're identifying. Forest fires, for example. This may not exist now, but thinking into the future, what data and AI tools can be explored for future use, whether it be putting out fires or just, dealing with the bark beetle, infestations. Is there any brainstorming going on with what the future of that may look like?
From my
Yes.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Go ahead, Stefan.
Okay, no, thank you. Just one word on that. For example, all the new very small satellites or nano satellites are being sent into space. They are. I mean, I guess the next generation of satellite will pre-analyze with embarked AI the data and send only to the ground the useful results or deforestation maps and so on. So I think, for example, that's an example of what we'll do in the future, I guess.
Okay, excellent. Before we wrap up, defending our forests, any other initiatives that, that are currently underway to help reduce further loss?
You mean the policies? Well, I think every country is working on it. So as you know, they work on the NDC, so the National Development Contributions. They have also the adaptation plans. So I think more and more countries are really putting it into their system in order to go and reduce at least the emissions, and then maybe also look into adaptation. So I think the awareness is there. The public, sometimes there's a very big discussion between the individual responsibility versus the governmental responsibility. So in that sense, I think Kate has a great point. So it's about the humans, so also about your own responsibility. So I think we have these two different streams. For the countries, I think, well, we'll see now in COP27, as we talk now, what they will come out with. Unfortunately, as you know, climate is never the priority. And now in this crisis of energy and the war situation, unfortunately, it's still at the back of most of the political agenda, which also makes sense because first people have to survive before we can talk about forests. But I think, unfortunately, the last decades, there has always been something. Then we had COVID. So I think with the last IPCC reports and also with the last news we have from the UNEP report, the gap assessment, I think people see that we're on the tipping point. So, and that forests do matter and can make a big difference. So hopefully it's taken up and we should keep on pushing. I think this is also why this audience of this webinar, I think this is real duty as scientists and to talk to the world and say what's going on, because a lot of people want to do something, but unfortunately, if we don't communicate, and this is also why these initiatives are great, to bring it out in the world and what's going on. So to take it out of the R&D and the nitty-gritty tech specs, but really to share with the whole community.
Yeah, I totally agree. That hit a particular point for me that I think is so important to state, is that there are so many people who care about these climate issues, but because it's not pain point number one for them, without policy, without that human aspect, without creating communities that inherently will work towards practical, actionable solutions, we're not going to see that change. We're not going to get it out of the R&D phase, exactly as you said.
Excellent. Well, moving on to our last theme, which is enhancing or rebuilding our forests. What initiatives are currently using data and AI to rebuild our forests, both in rural forested areas and urban areas? So this is all about reforestation, which Pierre-Adrien said should really be one of our focus areas for today. So I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say.
So maybe I can give a goal on this. So with the CPAL, which I mentioned, so the cloud-based platform, so also has a module, as said, there's a UN Decade of Restoration. So of course, afforestation is not the only environment in there, but it's a big part. And so there's a whole module specifically for the restoration part. So I would encourage people who are interested, as I've shown, I don't know, I think this slide is going to be shared with everybody. You can just log in and make an account, and then you can have access to this module to really use it for in the whole framework of the UN Decade for Restoration. So this is one of the top of my head initiatives I know, but of course there must be many more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are many initiatives. For example, Inge was talking about RED Plus in her talk, which includes this restoration part, and there is some research. There is some research on that on the global tree restoration potential, which has been published, for example, in Science in 2019, showing that there are some lands that could be used for forest restoration, but it's causing a lot of debate because, of course, we can't just plant trees anywhere, even if for example, in savannas there is a lot of biodiversity and so on that is unique. So that's creating a huge debate, but yes, there are some hints here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think it's important that we take a look at monitoring at scale the afforestation efforts that we've put in over the last 10 years, 20 years. Iceland, I think, is a really interesting example in that the trees that can survive there now are not the same trees that could have survived there 800 years ago when they were the native species. So we really have to get creative with what we're planting, where we're bringing things from, what works in the future. And I think the benefit that we have with the technology that we have now is that we can look at that from space, like looking at NVDI data. It doesn't necessarily take an arborist to go monitor what we've planted years ago to be able to learn from it. We can take the tools that we have now to monitor the efforts that we've made in the last 10 and 20 years and learn from that a lot faster than we've ever been able to do before.
And this is really a research topic now. I had to know what to plant where and to what purpose, but this is really one of the main problems even now. I mean, a huge amount of trees that are planted now or just die, and it's a huge amount. So for example, people think, okay, I give a little money there, and they would plant some trees, but many trees die because there is no monitoring besides, or because they just don't plant the right trees at the right place, like you said. And in the future, it would be even more difficult with the climate change. Yeah. But there is a lot of research on that right now. Yeah.
Excellent. I've been curious, what about the role of like AI-enabled drones to like help with reforestation? I know that, you know, soil health and all of that is a big factor, because again, you can't just, you know, plant a bunch of seeds everywhere and expect for them to take. But, you know, looking at data in AI once again, does it seem like that's going to be very beneficial in the future, or in addressing those issues?
I think it really depends on how we apply the technology, because again, coming back to this, like what research versus application, we can use drones to monitor soil health, but if there's not some economic or policy incentive there for somebody else to get on board, for somebody to lend the time or the talent to analyze that and put that to use, then we're not going to grow from that. We may learn from it, but nobody's going to grow from it. So I think what's really important is finding ways to tie that back into business value. So figuring out how we can use the tech that we have to move quicker on the initiatives that businesses today are already using. So again, this the example I'll always go back to with utilities. It doesn't make sense for them to send an arborist to walk all of their 20,000 miles of power lines to look and see if the trees around those power lines are dead or alive. It makes a lot more financial and just time sense for them to use drones and satellites to their advantage to do their jobs faster. And the benefit of that is not just economic for them, but it's in that we're not starting wildfires, that we keep power on for people, that we don't have to apply these just chemical bombs basically to these rights of way that kill biodiversity. We can get a lot more intelligent about what we're doing. So by tying those things together, yes, absolutely, that drone technology, the new technology you're talking about, will have an application. But if we're not tying it together, I have seen so many promising, exciting projects, just they die where they stand, because there's nobody who's willing to pull in the effort and to pull in the people to analyze that data.
Great.
Yes, I think like the drones, it came a long way, was a hype before, also because it's such a nice toy. But at the end, I think the tools also there. One of the applications could be the hyperspectral, because I think this is a terrain which can still offer a lot, but again, there it's a huge amount of data to be analyzed, and also looking for useful information in there. But also for suitability maps, I can think of also linked to soil or no. I think drones is a quick initiative, which if there's no satellite, and also made a better resolution, but I think it has to be embedded in a greater framework. Some countries approached even FAO, like to do a wall-to-wall monitoring with drones for their national forest inventory. I said that's a very nice idea, but then in concrete terms, I think it's rather undoable, also for technical, let's say, limitation of the drone itself. So yeah, of course it has a role, but it's linked in the framework, I think, to link it up, maybe from national scale to a regional or national scale.
That leads me to a couple of our last questions, and then we should just hop into the open Q&A. But one of them is, what's the level of urgency around all of these initiatives? Is there a threshold that we're approaching that we must quickly act on to avoid surpassing?
Yes, I said quickly by I said by Inge purely. You said typing point. We could just talk very quickly on the typing point in the Amazon. Like we think that with the climate change, the Amazon could turn into half of the Amazon could turn into a savanna. for a very long time with between 20 and 20% of deforestation in the Amazon under the climate change conditions. And we estimate that we already deforested approximately 19% of the Amazon. So that's really one of the urgencies at the Amazon typing point, for example.
Yeah, well, I think from what we can hear now in the news, and especially with COP upcoming, and there's no big expectations this time. I think the emergency has always been yesterday. I read also yesterday an article of a professor who said that we should have acted in the 60s and the 70s, which is also true. But I think anything we can do now would be the main part. I talked about the 1.5 degrees. Most of us, at least from the scientific community, we realize that we're never going to get there. It will be 2 and more. But every degree matters, every 10th of degree matters. So I think everything we can do, we should just go for it. And as said before, there's unfortunately now this time frame does not give us all the time to just figure out all the R&D and then apply a nice application and see where it can go. Unfortunately, the world is turning, things are going on, so we really have to act. One is really to reduce all these hazards coming from the climate. And I think this is already something most countries are trying to look at. Unfortunately, the least developed countries have the most impact. So this is still an issue for the developed countries, how to move with this. So I hope in the COP there will be finance streams who at least will tackle that. And then also keep on going to the R&D as quick as possible and as good as possible in 2 parallel streams. That's how I see it.
Thank you. Well, last question. What recommendations do you have for citizens, policymakers, and businesses, many of which are probably on this call, to protect our forests?
I think find ways to make it valuable for everyone involved. You know, like you mentioned, there's the massive amount of data that can come from drones is interesting, but how actionable is it? And I think when we're conscious of making policy that serves our communities, that serves businesses, that has climate in mind and meets the needs of everyone involved, there's this inherent motivation, this inherent energy to follow through on something rather than letting it be pain point number 4 or 5 and letting it fall down the list when we are struggling with wars and with keeping people alive today and yesterday. You know, the planet it's the only planet we have, right? So we can't let it be pain point number 4 or 5. We need to find ways to tie all of these things together so that we keep this motivation and keep this energy.
Yeah, also in that respect, so I briefly touched upon the climate finance. So I think it's also an unprecedented. There's so much money from private sector really into this whole climate initiative, also to forests, as we've seen also in Glasgow. At least there was so much money pledged. So in that sense, for policymakers, really, as Kate said, make sure that everyone benefits for it. Of course, private companies still have to make their business model and have to make money. So it can be used, though, in a good way. And then if climate finance is linking into a country, most likely goes to governments, then that money is used for the right people, because who should get the money is still one of these big question marks. So if it's government who owns these forests, or is it the people who really need the forest just for survival? So that these streams, let's say, for finance, which will come in, and then we're not talking about little money, as you might know. So there's billions floating in these climates, also like with the carbon credits, so that this whole parts gets really sorted out in a fair way so that everybody can benefit from it, at least also the ones who really need it.
Excellent, thank you. Well, if there's are there any other inputs on that one? If not, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the audience for Q&A. I'll start with the first one, and that is a question from Dulce Blanca Punzalan. What are the challenges of data quality in global forest ecosystems? Interesting question.
You want me to start? So yeah, excellent question. Data quality is crucial. As said before, so a lot of data out there. So one of the topics I mentioned also, so we have a report, even now, better data, better decision. So what is good data? I also know for the in situ data, there's quite some efforts really to have good data, because the data has to match also the satellite data. So I think data quality is crucial. So this is also a big part in any NFI which is set up, as we said before with Stefan. So in any product that's made with satellite data, we need a calibration validation. So in that sense, there should be also that data quality set up. Now, talking about the international frameworks, data quality is needed and is also guaranteed in a way by the review processes, because you have to get to some standards, and in these standards the data quality is always checked. So with consistency, with the same let's say the way you analyze the data has to be consistent over time in order to make sense and to really, because what we're looking at the end is changes. Of course we want to know what's out there, but we mainly want to see what's a change and where is this planet or your country or any part moving to. So in that sense, the quality of the data has to be consistent over time and also be quality checked. So it's crucial. And so in these frameworks, there's the standards who look for this. In other parts, of course, that's something like in science part, that's something that the researcher really has to try to apply to.
Mm-hmm. But I think regarding satellites, for example, satellites or LiDAR. Anyway, we are in a golden age of the data for forest monitoring. There are some all the time some new sensors really adapted to forest monitoring. We have some LiDAR in space, in the International Space Station. We have some upcoming new satellites dedicated to forest monitoring. So we have really more and more good data dedicated to this topic. Mm-hmm. And regarding the in situ data, it's in good hand with amazing people taking care of that. So that's also good news.
I think speed is also worth noting there too, though, and in that we can't, in certain applications, we can't wait for perfect data or to be able to make decisions and take next steps. I think that's where sometimes businesses and organizations get hung up, is that they want all of the data and they want all of the data to be perfect and detailed, when in reality, you don't have to, not all of the decisions that we're making to make progress require that level of precision in order to make intelligent next steps.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Sorry.
Please, Stefan, go.
Yeah, I agree with you, but there are some cutting edge technologies sometimes, like Copernicus is one of the cutting edge technology, for example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to bring in also that in most of the cases, every data, and this is maybe also the weakness of the scientific world against the policy one, comes with uncertainties. So as long as you know the uncertainty of the data, then you can show that and which level you're confident that that's the right part. And for all these standards, I didn't go into detail, you need to report the data, the figures with the uncertainties. So in that sense, it brings it all to perspective. Because I agree with Stefan, I think we're in the golden age. I mean, when we started our careers in this remote sensing, we had like one image every, I don't know when. Now we don't know where to look at, and all these sources. And then, for example, I said also in our case, with the Have Planet data, which is high resolution data on these mosaics, it's almost a dream for the scientific part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this leads into another question that we received. I think it really ties into a lot of what we discussed with our major themes and the role of data in AI there. And the question is from Jan Borsch. To what extent does the collected data and processed, I guess, to what extent does AI actually lead to solving the issues causing deforestation? So besides improving early warning capabilities, what is the overall impact there of AI? Is it impactful? Not really.
To me, it's more until now. I mean, if we talk about AI and deforestation, to me, it's more still like research and development right now. First, there is this problem of mapping deforestation globally, which is difficult with AI so far, and also. Yes, for example, I have an example in the Cerrado. MAAP Biomass just built a system of alert for the forest degradation in the Cerrado, which is very degraded right now. But so it was very difficult without AI. AI did work there because AI, I guess, see some changes in the signal, optical or radar signals that we cannot check otherwise, but it's still research, in my opinion. It's promising,
Yeah, I agree with you, Stefan. I think AI really lead to solving issues. It's a tool which can help us. So solving issues, then you should go out at least looking into all the drivers of these, for example, deforestation, rather than just checking the data and monitoring deforestation. So it has to be part in. I think AI, though, leverage also the fact that by having the data and being able to present this also to policymakers, I think this is one of the strengths of this AI. Without being an end goal, it's part of the solution too. Of course, AI is not going to solve it. As said before by Kate, it's the human. We have to change, and all these data can only be used for certain points. And AI is one of the tools for it. But it's there, and as said, with all the data which are out there, it's of great use to at least to know what's going on.
It is. I think it offers something significant too, in that AI is not necessarily going to have the amount of historic bias that people will. So when people are looking at these data, they're considering historic patterns, and what we're experiencing right now is not historically consistent. It's new, and I think the advantage to AI is that the data is going to show up in different ways that maybe we're not expecting, and so we can lean on those tools to familiarize ourselves with unfamiliar patterns and get comfortable looking at things that might not have been as comfortable in the past.
All great responses. Well, we are just about at time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the panel discussion. But before I turn it over to Miriam Chave for our Teens in AI session, I just wanted to thank all of you for your participation. It was great hearing your perspectives on this topic. And if you can hang out, there's going to be a networking session taking place in the neural network later on. And it'd be great if, all the questions that we didn't get around to, you can answer them later on. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks all.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So very happy to introduce now a short session with Teens in AI. So just a quick intro on the fact that we involved in partnering with Teens in AI almost 1 year ago. So Teens in AI is an organization, non-profit organization that has been founded by Elena Sinel in 2018 within AI for Good event, by the way. And they are helping on AI education to inspire also teens and get better learning on AI implementation. And they do that for teens across the globe. This was really also interesting for us because they work also a lot within also developing countries and not only like Europe or some countries where education is already quite developed. We involved since a year, as I mentioned, and we are partnering in the hackathon. And this summer, we have many monitors participating in the hackathon dedicated to climate action SDG. So Teens in AI is really into tackling SDG, and all the teams participating in the hackathon are involving in proposing some project to tackle these SDGs from United Nations. I will now hand over to Koza, who is there, Mohammed also was there, both connected. Lily couldn't join, but they are coming from UK, Egypt, Kazakhstan, as I remember, if I do it well, and they will present their project Ophelia with focusing on forest ecosystem. I will let them share the screen. Welcome, Koza. Welcome, Mohammed.
Hi, my name is Koza. And my partner's name is Mohammed. I'm not sure if he's joining now, but I'll just start the presentation then. Well, good afternoon. We're Ophelia, and we use AI to suppress wildfires. The world is burning. There have been more wildfires in the past decade than any other decade on record. And the latest UN climate report shows that these issues are only getting worse. This is a peek inside an operations office at an emergency command center. Recent studies and case reports highlight a worrying trend. Large fires have put stretched fire services at risk of collapse. And here we can see the devastation that wildfires cause when such a collapse happens. Speaking to people working in wildfire operations, we see three big issues: lack of resources, lack of information, and poor heat-of-the-moment decisions. The former two are being tackled with more funding and satellite data, but heat-of-the-moment decisions have no prior solutions. Introducing Ophelia, the world's first AI-powered wildfire operations support tool. So what is the architecture of our software? An operations officer uses the AI, which is updated with the latest satellite data. The AI then comes up with strategies to tackle the wildfire and sends them to the simulation orchestrator. These are then simulated, and the outcomes are relayed back to the AI, which decides which strategy is best, and this is recommended to the user. Then the user can make changes to the strategy and see how it affects the spread of the fire. There's a back and forth until the user is happy, and then the resources are dispatched. It's important to mention that the AI takes a couple of minutes to generate a plan, but currently firefighters take up to 45 minutes. And this is a huge step up from the norm as wildfires spread extremely quickly at 10 kilometers an hour on average. To combat ethical concerns, it's important to highlight that our software is here to augment human decisions and not replace them. All decisions are made with a human in the loop, and strategy decisions can be explained by simulation outcomes. Let's demonstrate this concretely. To implement the simulation, we created a map of multiple layers such as fire, altitude, and wind, as shown on the left. In the main map on the right, green is shown as the green is vegetation and the civilization is pink, and the yellow is the fire. As we can see here in our simulation, without intervention, the wildfire spreads extremely quickly. However, when we use AI, we can see that the AI creates an intervention fire line, which stops the fire from spreading. This is our prototype of our user interface for the operations office. And this is a sample plan proposed by the AI. As we can see, it's placed diggers here for the fire line and a fire truck here. And this yellow line here is the fire line, which it suggests. And this is the inventory manager, where operations officers can track their resources. Our software has the potential to save thousands of lives and billions of dollars. However, it can't be utilized if it's not further developed in the hands of an operations unit. Therefore, we need your connections to experts in forest protection and wildfires in order to widen our reach and to gain more insights into the logistics of firefighting and potential sources of data we can use. The world is burning, but we are here to predict and to protect. Thank you. That's all. I think Mohammed wasn't able to join, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Kosa. Thank you for the speech. I need also to precise that this has been presented to the 2021 hackathons, and since that, I guess you've been progressing also on developing this project. But I think this is a very interesting place for you to get some connections, and that would be great if some people in the chat or through neural network could connect with the team of Mohammed and Kosa also to kind of give some guidance and create some connection there. Thank you. I hand over to you, Melissa. Thank you, Kosa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kosa. The work that you're doing is incredible. So congrats on that. So I guess it's time to head into the second part of our event, focused on showcasing concrete examples of some of the solutions that we discussed earlier. And we are happy to have many speakers involved that will be presenting their work today. So first we will have Sugu Durasamy, and I apologize again if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, a sustainability expert and general manager of Shago Aski Foundation, and Johnson Aluk, an Indigenous trapper from Northern Alberta, Canada, and founding member of Shago Aski. Marcus Norwegian from Sogeti's Data and AI offering team is also joining them to share the work that they're doing using geospatial intelligence. Then we're going to hear from Punti Santani from Capgemini, who comes from an extensive data analytics background and is currently leading the Sustainability Data Hub globally. And then lastly, we'll hear from Cedrine Daniel and Arthur Duflat regarding Capgemini's biomass project. Cedrine is a scientific expert in STAR Radar and the head of the scientific expert team as part of Capgemini's Perform AI offering. Arthur Duflat is a business analyst at Capgemini Aerospace and Defense and leads the biomass MAAP or MAAP project. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them so they can present their slides and show us what they're working on. Sugu, starting with you.
So I think it's Marcus that will, so I'll share my video and share my screen. Let's see if I can find out. So let's see, can you see my screen and do we have sound?
Yes, I can see and hear you.
Perfect. So thank you for having us. We will talk a little bit today about protecting and restoring forests using AI and indigenous knowledge. So the framing here, and Sugu might jump in at the end, but I think it will be me and Johnson speaking, where I come from the Capgemini group, while, as you said, Johnson is from the Shago Aski team, an indigenous trapper with, I think, 40 years of experience being out in the land, and he should tell you more about that, not me. So I'll stop there. And we have had contact, I think, for the last 1.5 to 2 years between Sogeti and Shago Aski talking about this topic in different ways. So I simply start with a question without really answering it here now. But one thing that we have been discussing and thinking about, of course, is why should we combine AI with indigenous knowledge? What is the value in that, and why could this be different in a sense? And of course, I think you all know we have quite a challenge on our hands globally. Basically, we have a number of crises going on in climate, energy, and so on. We see poverty, health issues. We see pests, invasive species, wildfires. We talked about wildfires several times already. We have the pest problem in Sweden, a number of countries with the spruce bark beetle. We know there are spruce worms and you name it, that are spreading and causing a lot of damage. And of course, we get carbon emissions with dying trees, the wildfires and so on. And of course, this is like an enormous task, but on the same time, of course, it's an enormous potential. And we think, as I think many here in this forum think, forests are key in solving and working with these things to mitigate them. So I will actually hand over to Johnson to speak a little bit about these challenges and have him describe what he has been seeing on the land. So Johnson, if you're on video and on sound, I leave it over to you. So do we have?
Hello?
Yeah, now we hear you.
Okay. Yes, I'm Johnson Alec from, I'm a trapper from Northern Alberta, Canada, and I've been trapping for over 40 years. Started when I was young, and yeah, I've been out on the land all my life, really. Yeah, and I guess my backyard is the forest. I live right in it, so I see a lot of change from the day I started trapping, and yeah, and so I'll start with the buffalo first, and we're trying to protect the buffalo and protect the habitat at the same time, and protect our animals from the fires and the logging industries that are taking away our trees. And if they take away our trees, we lose our trapping. So this is really important to us to maybe somehow get help protect the forest. So in our plants, whenever there's a logging company comes into the forest and we go take our medicine plants that have been passed on from our elders, and they never go back. We have to go miles to go get the same kind of plant. And what I noticed is that the most important tree that is in our area is the spruce, and that's what they're logging out. And so maybe I was thinking there's a better way of planting the trees too, is if they would plant closer, and after the planting they'll leave it the way it is, so it'll kind of mimic the natural growth. And we figured the trees will grow faster because they'll be shaded and they'll grow moss. Over the years, we've been like going into these cut blocks, tree planting areas. All spruce are spread out, and they're thinning out the areas, and no moss growing. The moss we figured the moss helps the area and holds the moist in the ground. So this is my thinking. Maybe if there's a better way of planting, I know there's a better way of planting.
Maybe we can continue to the next slide, because you talk a little bit about some of these things. I mean, as you say, better ways of planting and so on. Mm-hmm. And this is also a little bit, if you want to talk to this image as well, Johnson, about AI and your understanding.
Okay, about yeah. There's I think there's this AI that can help us in a way, like we're out on the land and find the flooded areas where beavers flood the area, and most of the time as trappers we're trying to balance the area with the beaver so we can trap them over again, but at the same time trying to save the spruce stands where the beaver floods. That's where mostly we would trap beaver. And there's another thing that I noticed like out on the land in the summer, like when the summer is hot, the first thing we see is a diamond willow. They have sensitive leaves that will dry up faster, and they'll freeze up faster when it's cold. So this is what predicts the summer for us. So yeah, and
so that's a few examples of how you read the land, and the willow in turn is important for certain animals, and to find the habitats. We need to find them to protect the buffalo, and so on. So I'll continue, since I think we will be a little bit short on time as well. But these are some examples, I think, of indigenous knowledge where you know how to read the land, while we can use AI and tech to be as you put it very wisely, I think AI can be our eyes on the ground from the sky. So we can scale, but we still can't solve the problem. Then we have Johnson and your colleagues basically that can actually do things using the way you read the land to create balance. And we will get back to that. So I'll continue just in because of the time frame we have. And thank you, Johnson, for that. Wildfires, as I think this is basically a known fact to all here. They cause a lot of damage. Some figures here, I think the 5 billion is the US and Canadian area only in management cost, and we still see the problem getting worse. We have millions of acres burning every year. We have, the huge amount of damages and release of carbon dioxide and so on. So what we're thinking here is that if we combine AI and indigenous knowledge, we can find ways to allow nature to create a more resilient landscape. So we actually use the nature's own systems and solutions to try to solve some of these problems. And I have a few examples. I think you need to use different tools, but so we have done some work with our team. We have created a spruce bark beetle damage model where we can find spruce bark beetle attacks. Of course, you can use NDVI and other methods and deep learning methods to create an understanding of where you have problems. And this can help us to prioritize and know where to go. And then to know what to do, we think that could be interesting to leave to the indigenous knowledge to understand if it's a natural burn you should do, or you should maybe take away some of the brush or the dead trees or fuel and so on. So these are two examples of that, where the lower left is from a hackathon we did, creating a priority list basically on areas where you have high carbon and high mortality rates. As one simple example of a priority method. Of course, you can do that, a lot more work on that and scientifically, but it's to illustrate it. The other one is how we could use land cover classification like the one ESA World Cover to understand habitats and how the land is changing and how the land is looking from the scale perspective. And we could do species segmentation that we've done here in Sweden. You have a specific, like you mentioned, the willow, which is connected to biodiversity and how things work. So we can use AI to find these markers, and then we have the indigenous knowledge to actually understand and interpret and know where to go. So to try to summarize this a little bit is that we can, using the combination of these two, we can create awareness in the communities so they can see how the landscape is changing and understand that. We can know where to go to de-risk and restore and do fire mitigation work and things like that. We can monitor and audit, which I think is super important in order to create the trust in the actions that we take. If we are selling offsets or carbon credits, how do we know that that is actually true? I think the biomass initiative is super interesting from that perspective, for example. And of course, the other part that I think is really exciting here is that the unique in situ data, because that's always the problem with remote sensing, is the ground truth, and how do we actually know that it's right? And we have the skills that Johnson describes that could be an extremely exciting way to get in situ data on these things and a completely different understanding, including a historical knowledge of the changes and why they happen as they do and the connections to other things. So that's a thing we are very excited about. And I think I want to stress, because this is always, I think we talked about this earlier as well, that it's not the AI will not really solve the problem. But if we combine the human and AI and the indigenous knowledge in this case and AI, then it helps us and see, but also do more, and we can do it better because we know where to go and hopefully also have the understanding of what to do depending on how the land is looking to create that balance that we're looking for. So the final words from us is that we think we have a pretty good idea on how to do this by combining this knowledge. And this is actually by focusing a lot on working to protect the buffalo, the biodiversity, the species, that will actually protect the forest. So it's not just protecting the trees. And this is where I think what Johnson described, different planting methods and things like that, and fire mitigation strategies that can actually create renewable energy that can create a business and make this a viable solution that is not needing funding all the time from a government or something, but actually be sustainable in a business perspective as well. And this is what we are quite excited about. So I think, and it connects to these goals really nicely, this initiative that we have been discussing, which is the combination of AI and indigenous knowledge. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus and team. Let's move on to the next presentation. Puneet?
Thank you. Let me know if you can hear me clearly.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Interesting. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon. I'm Puneet Santani. I lead the Sustainability Data Hub COE for Insights and Data Capgemini. Very interesting conversations. I heard from Marcus that it is us who has to solve the problem. AI can only support us, right? I'm going to talk about how AI and data can help us support to solve the problems for the sustainable and forest. So we heard Inge talking about the importance of data and how do you measure the progress of the sustainability initiatives, right? And we heard Kate talking about how you can improve the impact of those initiatives by collaborating, by sharing the data, right? And then we heard Stefan talking about how you can predict and anticipate of deforestation as an example, right? These are the three major pillars, right, which will help the human from data and AI perspective, empowering them to make the change globally around the sustainability and AI for forest initiative. Now, what is the common thread linking all of this? Data is the common thread linking all of this, right? But data comes with its own challenges, right? Now, biggest challenge about data is the trust that we instill in the data. And the trust can only be instilled if the data is of high quality, not very often available. Sufficient quantity of data being available, again, not an easy task, right? How do you measure the data, right? If I am able to have a quality data, I'm able to have sufficient data, but do I have the capability to measure the data, right? And data comes in various complex formats, and there is external dependency on the data. So how do you overcome all of these different challenges on the data? And one of the ways to overcome is a tool from Capgemini, which we call a Sustainability Data Hub. What is Sustainability Data Hub? It is a framework which is a collection of various assets and accelerators across your data, analytics, and use cases, sustainability use cases. And it has got three pillars: data exchange, analytics workbench, and sustainability play. What is data exchange, right? We spoke about data sharing among various entities globally, right? When we talk about afforestation or deforestation, it's a global environment, right? And impact, if say for example, afforestation of desert impacts the deforestation in Amazon, right? So it's a global ecosystem which gets impacted, right? And how do you collect data globally, combine that data in a specific data model, which is trusted for building various AI-based use cases, right? And how do you share the outcome of those use cases? So data exchange brings you the capability to collect and share the data. Analytics workbench brings you the capability to build AI and ML use cases. Sustainability brings you the capability to share the outcome of these use cases across. Now, this is a simple architecture of the Sustainability Data Hub, three pillars, but let's move on to see how the tool looks like, right? So these are the three pillars we spoke about. Let's see, we'll start with data exchange, analytics workbench, and sustainability play demo. We'll start first with sustainability play. What is sustainability play? Like I mentioned, it's a collection of various use cases and the outcome of those use cases that you can share with, right? Kind of a marketplace scenario. Let's look at sustainability play in action. So if you see over here, it brings in, apologies for the delay, some lag, but it brings in a collection of various solution reports and capability to create projects. So it's a collection, like I mentioned, various use cases on carbon exchange, scope 1, scope 2, and also various use cases like farm. What are these use cases? Let me present two examples over here, right? One of the example is Mojave Desert example. Like I mentioned, the desert ecosystem, it's very important to maintain a sustainable forest ecosystem on our earth. Now, any impact on the flora and fauna of desert ecosystem disturbs the overall ecosystem here. And what is the which is the major thing which impacts this ecosystem? It is the movement of vehicles. The human incursion in the desert, right, destroys the flora and fauna. Now, what is this human incursion? How do you track this human incursion? We create an AI algorithm. We look at all the various images captured through drone, captured through satellite, and identify the areas of the desert where there is a high human incursion and connect with the authorities to put some restrictions around those areas, thus preventing any destruction to the flora and fauna of the desert. Another example, and I remember Stefan mentioned about how do you predict deforestation, right? One of the major challenge that we see, right, globally is the acquisition of the forest land by farmers, right? Now, farmers, to increase their livelihood, they start encroaching the forest land. How do you prevent that? You have a satellite image which shows you what is the yield of a specific farmer, right? If the yield is dropping, there is a high probability that farmer would want to expand the region that they are cultivating, and they would encroach on the forest land. So again, the Farm 2.0 interactive map shows you the encroachment and helps you set up various alert mechanisms to prevent that particular encroachment. Now, how do you build all of these use cases? Like I explained, you use AI and analytics workbench to build all of these use cases. Now, what is AI and analytics workbench? It is a collection of various pre-built ML and AI algorithms, pre-built data pipelines, and ability to deploy these AI and ML algorithms. So if you see over here, few of the numbers that I have presented over here, like say, for example, 8 pre-built ML models that you can customize and build use cases around it. There are 37 different data pipelines that you can customize to ensure that you collect the data and you prepare the data for those ML models, and various capabilities like how you deploy these AI and ML algorithms in the marketplace, which we saw earlier as part of sustainability play. But to build all of this ML models, data pipelines, one of the very important aspect is collection of data. So how do you collect data? And you collect data through capability provided via data exchange. So what is the exchange? Gives you the capability to collect data from internal and external sources. Here is an example of collecting the data from internal sources. It could be your ERP system, it could be your file system, or it could be any other system. Then you move on, see how you can collect the third-party data through various exchanges which are there in the market. So I'm just giving you here an example of automotive sample data which is available across in the open systems that you can subscribe to. You can also connect with Open Forest data and subscribe to the Open Forest data and bring it using the data exchange capability to build these various AI and ML algorithms, which you can showcase and share the outcome of those use cases using the sustainability play. Now, that's what I wanted to highlight, that the Sustainability Data Hub brings the power to human to measure the impact of various sustainability initiatives, collaborate with the global ecosystem, various agencies, right, and collectively improve the impact, and to anticipate how this impact could lead to the restoration and sustainable forest ecosystem. I'll end with a quote from our CEO, right, which says, collaboration is the only way that we can look towards a sustainable future. That's all I wanted to share today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Punit and team. That was a great presentation. We're almost at time, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pierre for closing remarks. And then you all may have some questions. Just a reminder that you can all join us at the neural network after this.
I think we still have
we have Arthur and Sandrine for MAAP first.
Oh, my apologies.
No worries.
No problem.
Arthur, Sandrine, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yeah, perfect.
Right, so hello everyone, I'm Sandrine and I'm a scientific expert in radar society.
Sandrine, you are a bit far. We cannot hear you very well.
Okay, I'm close to the Arthur, that's why. So I will speak louder. Thanks. So I'm Sandrine and I represent the MAAP, the multi-mission algorithm and analysis platform with Arthur. Yeah. So as we today and this afternoon with the panel guests, forest is very important to monitor, and in fact, 33% of Earth's surface is covered by forests. And the tropical forests, which are the most difficult to monitor, has more than 75% of the Earth's biodiversity. And forests absorb about 8% of Earth's atmosphere CO2. And that's why it's important to analyze, and especially forest ecosystem account for about 72% of terrestrial carbon storage. So that's why.
Sorry, just to jump in, but the audio really isn't very good. Is there any way that you could perhaps present directly from Arthur's laptop so that we have better audio?
Okay. Do you hear me?
Just, but not very well at all. I've asked you to... Can you go ahead and test?
Is that better? And now?
Perfect.
Okay, good. We succeed. So sorry again. Because of these all numbers, it's very important with climate change to know more about our forest and surveillance. So with current technologies, there are too many uncertainties in measuring the carbon sequestrated by the forest. So that's why the European Space Agency, ESA, has selected the seventh Earth exploration mission, the biomass mission. This mission is the first to use the sensor technology in kind of the P-band. And this sensor can penetrate the forest cover, especially in the dense tropical forest. Thanks to this new technology, this mission will provide crucial information on the state of our forest and will allow us to understand how they evolve. So this mission will map the biomass and height of forest, measuring the amount of carbon trapped. Before working on this future satellite mission, because it will be launched in 2024, with collaboration with ESA and NASA, Capgemini and its consortium with Sistema and CGI, we develop this map. This platform allows for the first time the entire scientific community, but not only, in order to work together on projects from space missions dedicated to the forest, such as this biomass, but also NISA and the JEDI leader that Stefan explained before, but also to have access to other open source data, as Copernicus, for example. This different product will be able to provide an above ground terrestrial carbon dynamic metrics. So I let Arthur to present you this map in concrete terms. So I will cut my sound, let you on this floor.
Okay, let's go. So the map itself can be described as a little ecosystem composed with 4 main elements. First element, obviously, it's the data. So the map provides a huge catalog of data coming from ESA and NASA mission. For now, we have data from the JEDI mission, but after we'll be having every biomass-related mission data, for example, the NISA or the biomass mission itself. This is a huge challenge because it represents a ton of data. The data produced by this mission are really enormous, and we have to harmonize all the data so the user can browse or can visualize data in a website. The second element is the collaboration, and it's a spirit, but it's the map really want to provide tools for all the users to collaborate, to share their works, to connect communities. For example, the biopal community or the BRICS2 community that are scientist communities related to the mission, the biomass. And along with this collaboration, of course, the map provide a development of environment where people can develop their algorithm, they can test their algorithm, and they can also see what the other have made, and they can not just start with a blank page, but they can fork the algorithm made by the other, and then to improve all the algorithm. After that, of course, when all the algorithms are developed, the map provide processing capability. They provide hundreds of CPU and GPU because to process all this data, it takes a lot of resources. So of course, it's a cloud-based platform to address all the need of power. Now this is a little theoretic, so I will show you a little live demo. So this is a landing page where you have all the tool. For example, you have the data catalog when you can have data from different missions. Here you have all the data from the ESA side. So you have test campaign of BioSA or TROPISA. After that, you can have a sort of development environment where there are different stacks, meaning that they are already pre-packaged environment with science library. And then you got the GitLab project where all the people, all the scientists are sharing their work. So you can see there's a lot of things in there. We have official biomass algorithm. Also, we have current works from different scientist community. And As a little conclusion, I really want to highlight the spirit of the MAAP, which is an open source policy, meaning that the ESA and the NASA really want the community to collaborate, to share their works, to share their data, and to improve the global knowledge of the monitoring of the forest, meaning that they want to sort of gather all the satellite mission around biomass. We cannot see all the mission as separate mission, but as one global mission to improve our knowledge. At the end of the slide, I made some different links. You can have the map link you can find on the internet. If you want more information, you can click on it and you can see what is it. And thank you for listening us.
All right, thank you so much. Sorry for prematurely cutting you off. We've really enjoyed your presentation, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Pierre so he can do concluding remarks, and then we hope to meet you all in the neural network so we can continue the discussion. Thank you.
Yes, so first of all, thanks a lot. I hope you hear me well. I guess so. I wanted to jump in approximately 32 times. So I had a lot to say, to comment, to ask, but I tried to limit myself. And actually, if I would not have, we would not be so good in timing. So that tells me something about what happened wrong the last 2 years when I always was struggling with the time boxing. So thanks a lot, Melissa, and also all the panelists and speakers for what has been said, commented on, given us the floor to, and in this kind of also nice spirit of discussion. Still, I will not leave without having said a few things, which are 4 or 5, 4.5, let's say. First of all, I think we have seen that data and AI solutions exist. They are there, not from the shelf, but they exist sometimes from the shelf. And the idea now is to approach them or to marry data with policies and governance. Policies, because we will need an ecosystem of accountable stakeholders, and they come in very different sizes and forms. And governance, because we will need, beyond the use of data, interoperability, data sharing, data quality, data ingestion, and all that data governance and people governance that transform the information we sit on literally, or we look at literally, into knowledge and decisions. Second, data and AI for forestry knows no age, no border. I think we have seen stakeholders and speakers from everywhere. We have seen teams in AI showing us actually the way, showing us how it's done and how information can be leveraged the right way. The team actually was sitting in UK, Egypt, and Kazakhstan, if I'm not mistaken. So really impressing. Third, tech from the sky needs knowledge from the field. I think that's, all these are sentences, right? But they echo the narrative and the messages that I think are really strong messages that were told during these 2 hours. Because yes, we can learn a lot from the big picture there at the top, but we need to dialogue, we need to interact, and we need to act together with the people from the field. And that's maybe just the last point, which echoes what Johnson has said. I think that, yes, his backyard is the forest, but indeed, if we would all consider forests our backyard, our own backyard, we would probably treat them differently, as too often, sadly, in our society. And yes, I think that this webinar session, dialogue, has really showed why and why it's now we would consider it our backyard, where we can then start to engage together on how to better give the place, better empower, better enhance the forestry and the forest areas of our world. So These were just my concluding remarks. I will hand over to Anna now for a last word, and let's meet in the neural network indeed.
Thank you for participating in today's AI for Good session. We hope you've learned something new, innovative, and engaging in today's event. We now encourage you to continue the conversation on the live video wall in the neural network. Here you can ask questions, like and comment, share links, complete the poll, connect with interesting profiles, or speak one-on-one using the chat and video function. After the networking session, we invite you to explore the lobby, try the smart matching quiz, visit the virtual exhibits, poster boards, the e-shop, and build your personalized AI for Good program. Let's shape the future of AI for Good.
you.